Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Van Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics Related Madness Network. Huh? So come get some. CromCon. CromCon.
Your favorite podcast is Critical Blast.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
Hi, I'm Dean Zachary, host of Silverline's Wednesday Wham, where we go beyond politics, beyond calculation, and beyond the big two. Join us each and every Wednesday. Don't miss out.
Hi, I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Silver Sunday on this Happy Father's Day. Want to wish a Happy Father's Day to all of the fathers out there today. Hope that your day was a good one and that you ate lots and got a nap in and you were treated like royalty today. Although probably the only one here in royalty is Pete, since he's across the pond and they have royalty over there, right? So, Happy Father's Day to everyone. This is Silver Sunday. This is episode number 3 for our Sundays. But the Wednesdays have been going on for 3 or 4 months now. So hopefully we welcome you all back to that. So tonight we are talking about, I've lost my title. Where did it go? We are talking about, it's part of our craft series. We're talking about creating well-rounded characters, and we've got a nice assortment of creators here tonight, and we're going to talk about various things that are important to creating well-rounded characters. So first, what we'll do is we're going to introduce ourselves, and then we'll go into it. I am Roland Mann. I am the host for tonight, and I am the writer of Cat and Mouse, which is right over my shoulder there. And also, if you've seen the Wednesday show, you know I'm the writer of, let's see if I can turn that just a little bit, whoops, the other way. I'm the writer of Trumps, which you've been seeing a lot of inks that Tommy does. And Trumps, is, of course, it's the playing cards and not anything about politics. So, but, you know, if that gets us some eyeballs, we're going to be okay with that. And yeah, I'm kind of the chief wrangler here at Silverline. So next up is Curtis. Curtis, tell everybody who you are.
Sure, I'm Curtis Fujita. I'm an illustrator, animator, concept artist. I'm also the editor on the Kalis series and the creative director here at Silverline.
Nice. And Curtis, you are also working on a project. Are you okay to mention it live? Are you good with that?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm working on.
Yeah,
Go
no,
ahead.
Curtis is working on a project. He's in the very early stages of development, but his working title for that is
Shadow Ghost.
Yep.
It's a martial arts comic book, and my other background is I'm a kung fu instructor or a kung fu master. So it's going to be the kung fu comic by a kung fu master.
That's right.
The selling point that we're saying. Yeah.
So when we greet Curtis, we say yes, Sifu. Right?
No, it's Mr. Creative Director, sir.
Mr. Creative Director, sir. Mr. Creative Director Sifu, sir.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So Curtis will be talking about creating those characters tonight as well as other characters. And first time with us tonight is Professor Dr. Josh Begley. Josh is a colleague of mine. He teaches in the creative writing department at Full Sail with me. Well, not actually, we're not in the same class, but he teaches a class and I teach a class. We're in the same department. So, Josh, why don't you introduce yourself and tell folks who you are?
Well, hi, everybody. Like Roland said, my name's Joshua Begley. I am Dr. Begley, and I'm not ashamed to say that. I teach the horror, mystery, and suspense class at Full Sail University, although I've taught a lot of different classes there, including the comics class that Roland typically teaches, which has been a lot of fun. I'm also a writer. Oh, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say, it's thanks to you. I have been allowed to take a vacation these last 2 years.
I'm happy to help.
Yes, me
One of these
too.
days I'll
And
get
so
it
is my family.
I expect a fruit basket next Christmas or something.
All right, we'll have to work on that. You hear that, Mama? You hear that, BJ? She on here. She's not listening.
I'm also a writer. I've had short stories and flash fiction published. I write reviews. I've written for Inside Pulse and the Fandom Post. Have my master's degree in creative writing from Eastern Kentucky University, which is where I'm from, Kentucky. And my PhD is in literature and criticism from Indiana University of Pennsylvania. And I'm new here at Silverline and really happy to be here.
Very cool. And Josh, you're going to be talking about your project, which is titled
King's Hunter.
King's Hunter. And we haven't really made a whole lot of announcements about that because this also still in the very early phases. But Josh has finished a script and it is being arted right now as we speak. Well, I don't know. Right now, she may be spending time with her family. I don't know. But certainly it is being drawn. So Josh will talk about some of those characters tonight as well. Next up, we have Pete Clinton. Pete, how are you this very early morning for you?
Very early morning. Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm the artist on the currently titled Champ Miss Fury. When are we going to come up with it?
I don't know. We need to do something. My wife and I were talking. You know, we might. This might be one of those things we consider running some kind of contest about. You know, seeing if we can just toss it out there to the fans and say, this is what we got. What do you guys throw us your best ideas and see what they come up with?
It's risky. It's risky.
Yeah. Well, we don't have to promise to use one, right?
Boaty McBoatface is what they named one over here.
Yeah. I think I've heard about that. That was some kind of election over there, wasn't it? What was that?
It was the same thing. It was for it to the general public to name a boat. It was one of the boats, and they said, you can name the boats. They named it Boaty McBoatface.
I remember reading about that.
So it's risky, but yeah. So I'm the penciler on as title currently titled Champion and Miss Fury.
Yeah.
So we're underway on another title. I didn't realize Silverline doing so many, but we got a load out there now.
Yes, there's a whole bunch of them in the works, which is why I don't get near enough sleep these days. And if it wasn't made clear earlier, Pete is joining us from the glorious England, and I'm not sure exactly where in England. Pete, are you okay to say what city you in?
Southeast London. Yeah, I'm
Southeast London. Okay,
yeah.
So you're right there in the heart of England, then.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. You had lunch with the Queen probably last week, didn't you?
Of course, we all do.
Yeah, you know, all Americans think you do, right? We all think you know and rub elbows with them because we've seen Downton Abbey.
Just queue up. That's right. That's basically my house.
Yeah. All right. Next up, Aaron Humphreys. Aaron, tell everybody who you are.
I am a writer and illustrator, comic artist, and am the penciler on the upcoming Fire Rush comic from Silverline. And I actually do my own comic, and so if we're talking tonight, I do my own comic, Godlings, and so this is just to show you the character. That's the character I'll probably be talking about the most tonight when we talk about strong characters. But I make my own comic book and I make kids books, and I'm just an all-around creative dude, I guess. I think like everyone on here, we're just all a bunch of creatives.
That's right. So after we introduce Mike, I'll come back and ask the question. So all right, Mike, tell everybody who you are. Don't laugh at me, Brad.
Good evening. I'm Mike W. Belcher. In addition to being a letter and production designer at Silverline, I create my own comic. And this week, I will self-promote. Man of the Definitely, yes. You can see it every Tuesday at amkcomics.com. And I guess that's what I'll be talking about as far as well-rounded characters.
Now, when you say see it every Tuesday, does that mean you have a free place for people to go to see it?
In addition to the print comic, which you can find at indieplanet.com, I have translated it into a web comic that I'm trying to update every Tuesday.
And is that on your own site? When you say you're up, you put it
Yes,
on a web comic?
AMK Comics.
AMK Comics, very cool. And as one, I used to have my copy right here. As one who has read Man in the Mask, I do highly recommend that you read it. I'm sorry, Mike. It used to be right here.
That's carried around with you so much. That's the reason it's gone. So
look what I find, Curtis. You'll appreciate this. It's a bit of Silverline Arcana, right?
Wow.
Yeah, this is an old newsprint. We used to take these to the conventions and give these away. It's when we were first announcing Silverstorm. I didn't mean to go there, but first announcing Silverstorm, Savage that we were going to do, which was done by R.A. Jones and Ted Slampiak, which ended up being printed by somebody else. I can't remember who. Not because I don't want to mention them, but because I can't remember who. I want to say it was the Caliber thing. And Curtis, I think you're the one who got the Lugo right last time we talked, right?
Yeah.
Or was it? Yeah. There's when we were talking about Lugo. This is when we were talking about Mexi manga, right? I think Aaron laughed at the term, right? But there's the Mexi manga, and this thing was printed probably in. Well, you can see it yellowing there at the bottom.
98.
This thing was 98.
Yeah, because I helped you with the cover and I did the back cover.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, so you've got Scary Book advertised in here, Roadways, which we ended up not doing, White Devil, which is actually going to be a book coming very soon, and I don't know if you all can see. I probably shouldn't do this these days because he's getting some bad press. But can you read the little name there on station?
Warren Ellis.
Warren Ellis. Oh. Yep. We were gonna do a Warren Ellis book. Warren had signed up to do a book with us, and we were pretty excited about that because in the
I had forgotten about that.
Yeah, in the late '90s, Warren was very much a hot ticket item, so we were very, very excited about that. Thank you all. I was gonna go back to something. What was I gonna go back to? Somebody help me remember.
You said something about going back to Aaron.
Yeah, but why?
Do you really need a reason why? I mean, look at me.
Yeah. Why was
it? Yeah, he's like, no, I'm not buying that.
Does it have something to do with Godling?
No.
No, I don't think so. I can't remember what it was now. Anyway, I'll remember. It probably has to do with the story of Fire Rush. Behind the scenes that you will not hear, but he will occasionally talk in our ears. And if I ever act like I'm responding to voices, I am, because my son is usually making snide comments in my ear, and he is our producer tonight, and that is Brett Mann, who streams on Twitch as he plays competitive PUBG. So Brett's behind the scenes. and he will not speak to you, but he will speak to us. So so tonight we are talking about craft. We are talking about creating interesting characters. I can't think of where I've lost my title to figure out. It's creating well-rounded characters.
Yeah, well-rounded.
Yeah. So so first thing I'm going to ask you guys, okay, and we're talking about comics, obviously. So we don't try to resist the urge to stray into film or games or anything like that. But how important is it in comics to have a well-rounded character? Who wants to jump in first?
Well, I guess I'll jump
Go,
in.
Curtis.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's important. You kind of need a level character that kind of represents a lot of things, so a lot of people can identify with that one character, usually as the main character. And you're always going to have those niche characters on the side, and those cursory characters. But you need that anchor that everybody can relate to, and that's why you need a Peter Parker, Clark Kent. Not necessarily their super egos, but their alter egos. I think that's so important. You need relatable characters. But that's my thought.
Yeah, definitely.
But what about the art? Shouldn't the art be the most important thing? We don't really need them to have character personalities, do we? I mean, shouldn't they just look cool? I mean, pouches and stuff.
But you can never have enough pouches, right? So
Right.
That's a given.
Yeah, those who have been here a while realize I'm still poking at certain comics from the 90s.
I don't know if you how many comic books are there on the stands? There's thousands, right? So
yes,
if it was just about them looking cool, there's nothing really that would draw you to one or the other. You think, well, that's cool. But the ones that are successful are the ones that the character is the primary driving force behind the story. There's got to be some sort of conflict with that character, not just a slap in the face and a big punch up every issue. There's got to be something more to it.
Yeah.
So I mean, those are why those characters have endured for over 60 years. It's not just looking cool.
Yeah, I think a lot of the characters. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh no, go ahead.
Oh, it just so many characters are archetypes of stuff, and so I think superheroes especially can kind of work as archetypes of certain ideals, but then I think that also helps the character to kind of go hand in hand. I mean, Captain America's a classic. I mean, the name itself is an archetype, America. So you have but his character, if he was just like running around spouting patriotic stuff, it wouldn't be as effective as his own character, like questioning his role and stuff like that. Yeah, I'm all done.
Actually, yes, I just got a message, and I won't call them out. Is that we need some art up there, Brett? One of you guys, Pete. Let's start with Pete. I'll put Pete on the spot. Pete, would you share your screen first?
Yeah, I'm just adding some stuff. Where my share screen?
So, Brett, about every 15 minutes, will you holler at one of them through a private message somehow and have them share? Oh, okay. Doggone it, I'll try to remember. I get wrapped up in doing this, and so Aaron, in 15 minutes, try to remember to just bump Pete off there.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
I haven't shared a screen yet, so let me know if anything goes wrong on your end.
Okay. Yeah.
If it looks weird or whatever.
Actually, tell you what we're gonna do. We're actually, because it's done 16, so we're gonna keep Pete on there until we do the comic review. Then after the comic review, Aaron, we'll go to you.
Okay.
That work? Okay.
That totally works.
Yeah. Cool. So let's take a brief moment here. Pete, tell us, if you don't mind, tell us what we're looking at.
All right. So this is actually, I've gone back to the rough of page 1 of Champion Miss Fury because I forgot to add the fire escape to that building. And that's what I was just adding in there. And then I'm going to try and, actually, I wasn't going to do the city tonight because or this morning, so I just haven't got the energy. So I was going to start on laying out a page 6.
Cool.
You can't see my actually on the screen. but for me is the double page 2 and 3. But you won't be able to see that now. But yeah, so I'm just going to try and add this fire escape very quickly, and add the flames of the burning building. I don't want to give too much away, everybody.
Sure.
But and then we're going to starting to page 6. So you'll see the whole how I start my process of scribbling, and just it'll be all over the place, and then
Nice.
we'll start cleaning it up into a layout and a rough. How
Sweet.
far we'll get tonight, I don't know, but we'll this morning, tonight.
Depends on this morning for you, right?
Yeah.
It depends on how many times we stop and interrupt you and make you focus on the answers, right?
Right, exactly. Good Lord.
Okay, so anyone else want to chime in about how important characters are in comics? Josh, I think you or Mike.
It's the whole. I mean, it's the whole thing. I mean, it's like you were talking about the art. I mean, you can have the best drawn rock in the world, but unless there's a story behind the rock, it's still just a rock. I mean, you could add so many other layers. What if this is a rock that's been shipped away from Mount Rushmore and then, traveled by, many hands over the years and has, gathered information and intelligence and all this other stuff that's just really integral to making it a character. I mean, that's really what it boils down to. I mean, where do we get our interest? Why do we care? And I think that's a big part of it. And while the art is extremely important, until this character is personified, you really don't have that little linchpin.
I really want to read your story about this rock now.
You just built a character.
So I don't know how many of you remember from Marvel Comics back in the day when they did something that was a little bit meta there. I can't remember which toy it was. Josh, you might remember this as well. The Marvel characters, a bunch of the Marvel characters got toys, and within those toys, they each had a thing. Like Thor had a hammer, Cap had a shield, and Hulk got a rock.
Yeah.
And in the comic book, Hulk was talking about their toys, and Hulk says, "I got a rock." So
was
Mike,
that
I'm
a
sorry.
Peter David?
I believe that. Don't hold me to it, but I'm pretty sure that was a Peter David.
Sounds like something he would write.
Yeah. It was very, very funny. Yeah, and so I'm sorry, Mike, when you mentioned the rock, I immediately went to Hulk and his rock.
Cool.
Josh, were you going to add something?
Yeah, I was just going to say characters are what give us the emotional investment in the story. I know we're talking about comics, but the writer John D. McDonald defined a story as something interesting happening to someone that we've grown to care about. And you need both of those elements. Like, I mean, there are plenty of really cool, visually stunning comics out there that I've read. And my reaction to them is, so what? Because I don't care about who's actually involved in it.
Yeah. Well, anyone that's heard me talk about I mean, probably we're all in comics because even if we don't art, because we love art. And I am one that can sit and like watch Pete do this for hours at a time because I love art. I particularly like line art. I like to see black and white. I love pencils, and then I love to see inks. Not that I don't like colors, but sometimes, certainly in our modern age of colors, I think it can kind of blur what the line artists do. But I have always argued that it is, as all of you have said, it's the art is what gets the reader, and I always call them readers. They're not lookers, right? They're not viewers, they're readers. And the art is what gets the reader to pick up the comic first, right? Generally, it's the cover. They're going to say, "Ooh, cool, look at this cover." They're going to pick the cover up and they're going to flip through it, right? They might read some words in passing, but really what they're doing is they're looking at the art. If they like the art, then they'll probably go back to the first page and skim that first page, right? Which is generally a splash page, not always, but the first page or two is going to be something big, something catchy. That's where smart writers put their hooks, right? And then that's going to convince the reader to buy it. But it's the artwork first. Then they're going to take that book home and they're going to read it. And they're either going to buy. Aaron's on the phone, and they're either going to come back and buy issue 2 based on the story because they like the story, right? The artist what gets them there. The story is what brings them back. So I have always said that, and we'll say that into my dying day. So
if I could tee
go
off
ahead,
that,
yeah.
You know, I was it's like, you know, art forms. I always find it interesting how different art forms you can kind of compare them, and it's like music, right? The catchy tune, the music will get you, but the lyrics will keep you staying and will keep you listening to the music over again and gives it depth and gives it something real.
Yes.
And if it's just something pop, like a poppy tune with no lyrics and no substance, you know, it's a one-hit wonder. It doesn't last. But the classics, right? There's something deep to those lyrics. Right?
Yeah. And Curtis, thank you. That reminded me of what I was going to say, because Aaron said something about we're all just creative people here. I was going to say, I'll bet half of us play an instrument of some kind. Yes. Pete, no. Aaron, no. Mike, no.
I tried to learn.
What?
Yeah, and I just couldn't think. Mathematically, it's math, whatever. Now, I'm a huge metalhead, so I love people who play instruments. But I can't figure it out. The math just, yeah, I know. It's weird. I know, because most creative people can jump around, but that's one I can't do. Yeah.
Wow, because I know so many comic creators who play. You know, I'm not saying that they do it well enough to get up on the stage and do it, but they play an instrument of some kind. Josh, I didn't see an answer from you. Instrument?
I played the cello when I was a kid, but I couldn't carry a tune on it now.
And Curtis, you said you were drums?
Well, it's funny because of the martial arts thing. There's something you call the enunciate called lion dance, not line dance, lion dance. And it looks like not like, you know. But it's like, if you ever see it, people think they're dragons, but during Chinese New Year, there's this big dragon kind of creature moving. And you use the drums to command them what direction to go and how to move, so they don't run into the crowd and stuff like that.
Wow.
So drums, I guess I didn't really even think of it, but yeah, I guess I do know how to play the drums. Yeah.
That is interesting, and because of you said that they use the drums for commands, did you know that in ancient warfare, and I don't mean ancient, I mean back at least up until the Civil War, they used drums for commands. That the drum would play a very specific beat, and the army would know what to do. That would tell the commanders what commands to issue to their troops. And I've got a tape of drum commands somewhere, drum and bugle commands. And there's a drum and a bugle command for every, like, you know, unfalad right, you know, about turn face, right? There are commands both on the bugle and on the drums for everything. So yeah, that's pretty cool. You guys, man, I can't believe you really popped my bubble on this one. I expected, you know, half of us to form a band, right?
My musical abilities are so bad that I once did karaoke, and the DJ handed out tissue paper that people would put in their ears.
Oh, no! That's terrible.
So yeah, I am musically I'm not gifted. No.
I don't know. I probably would have started singing louder, but then I'm cruel by nature. No, it's strange. I have a question on character. This is strangely enough a debate me and my friend Tom have had many a year. We have all sorts of debates. We've been friends for a long time.
Hold on to that question just for a second.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, just don't forget it. A couple of our listeners, watchers making Wubba says that he plays guitar. Wubba is an artist who has been sending us some stuff. And Chris says he used to play sax up until middle school. So these guys saved me here. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Wubba. Thank you, Chris. Okay, Aaron, back to your question there.
So we've talked about comics is unique because it seems so character based in that it like, since you have such ongoing series, since it's serialized, it has to wrap around the change of the character. And we've often talked about, because if you read like short stories in comics, that short stories can be a little more plot driven because there's a definite ending to the story. And so I wonder if that's something unique to comics, because the character, like strength of character, well-rounded characters have to be more essential to comics because of the constant continuity of it. And so, the constant change in every character. Because we've actually talked about genres like science fiction stories, and some of our favorite science fiction and horror stories are short stories. They're much more about a plot or a unique concept than the character. And I don't know. It was just a thought that we've entertained, and
Sure.
depending on the story, it is one more important than the other.
And I bet Josh has some thoughts by teaching in a creative writing department.
Yeah, I was kind of
as a
wondering
result of
because he
that.
taught horror and stuff. What his
Yeah.
thoughts about that were.
Yeah, generally, well, also with horror, that is very much an atmosphere-driven genre, and so
Yeah.
you get there's so many horror stories out there, and this kind of makes my job hard because with the kids, but there are times when you have something that's not really a story, it's just an incident, it's something that happened,
Right.
but it's so visceral, so powerful that you don't care. Like Robert Bloch's The Feast in the Abbey is a great example, where it's this guy who's searching for his brother and he comes across this monastery, and really there isn't much that happens, and I won't reveal the end. You can find it. It's published in the 30s, so it's under free use, but almost everything about it is predicated upon the reveal at the end, and so the plot is very thin, the characters are kind of thin, but it's still, it still works, because horror especially is about a lot of times provoking that reaction, especially in short versions. When you get into longer stuff, novels and whatnot, then you really have to know what you're doing with character and plot.
Yeah, Stephen King is a classic at that, especially if his longer stories. It's very much character driven. So yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, going back to the question of kind of more character driven stuff, in more serialized fiction, I think you see that in more like fantasy, especially sword and sorcery stuff, like Fritz Lieber's Fafhrd and the Grey Mouse, or like they have plots, certainly, but the fun of it is just these two characters going around Nuon getting into trouble. Robert E. Howard's Conan.
Yeah, I was gonna say Conan's another great example of that. I'm a big fan of. Yeah, it's unique. It's just sometimes unique. We've talked because it is different how stories are structured depending on what you want to tell in the story. If it's something to do specifically with a character's transformation to something else, or if it's something that a character's accounting outside of itself, how that story is structured. I don't know. It's just things we talk about, and it's just questions we brought up. We never have any answers. We just discuss them.
Yeah, that's actually something that as you might imagine, I cover in my class a lot. And while I haven't read a whole lot of Conan, so I can't speak specifically, I would argue that what I'm about to cover actually happens in the Conan books. You might just think, oh well, he's just running around, doing stuff, but I would bet, and again, I don't know because I haven't read a lot of them. I would bet this happens. And the problem you have is, we're taught as writers that characters have to have an arc. Characters have to experience some kind. There you go. That's a big old book of Conan.
That's a big where it's got it all.
That is wow.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the one I want. I can never find that. I need to hunt that down.
I'll grab one. Hold on a
second. We expect characters to arc. We expect them to experience some kind of change. Oh, look at that. Josh has got one.
I got excited there. Can y'all see this cover?
Yeah. Oh, nice.
I actually bought that. I bought that in London when I was studying there for a semester.
That's the Masterworks series. They did a whole series of these classic fantasies, and are they numbered? Those ones? Is it numbered? Like what?
This is volume 1, The People of the Black Circle.
Yeah.
Sorry. The number is on the back.
Yeah,
it's number 8.
They did a whole series. Yeah, number 8. Yeah, so that was where they ranked it. I think number 8 classic.
This book kind of saved me because I took a weekend trip to Paris and I stayed in a hostel and had my money stolen.
Oh, man.
And so I had my train ticket back, but I was like, if I walk around Paris, I'm just going to get hungry and I don't have money for food. So I'm just going to stick around the hostel and read Conan stories. Luckily, some guy took pity on me and bought me a sandwich.
Wow. So anyway, we expect that change, and that's the kind of thing that you can see when you have a single character in a single story. But Aaron, I think what you're talking about is and certainly in serialized and episodic work, the characters cannot change. You cannot change those characters. One of the things that we are always reinforcing to our students is the status quo has to remain. Right.
Yeah.
If you change Peter Parker, you have effectively changed everything about the story. Right. And so what happens in serialized fiction is that the primary characters are the vehicle for change for characters outside of their circle or within their circle. Yeah. So you don't see so much a character arc. Again, I will just use Conan for you. You don't see so much a character arc in Conan because he can't change, because then he ceases to be Conan, right?
Yeah.
So what you see is you see the people in Conan's circle experience the arc, and Conan is the vehicle through which those characters arc.
That makes much more sense,
Yeah.
because it is true. I mean, and that to me seems like would be one of the most frustrating things about writing certain superhero characters is you could change them. You could do things to change, and they have done that. But of course, immediately have to revert back to the original concept of the character because you can't change the overall arc of the story.
Right.
And so that would be to me, it would be a very hard barrier to get around, because when I write my characters, I mean, obviously there's a very transformative change that's going to happen to them.
Right.
And it would be hard for me to well, no, you can't touch that.
Yes, and you get to do that because you own those characters, right?
Exactly.
That's something that you get to make the decision, right? When you work on a corporate character, then you have to do what they say. You have to and of course, again, this goes back to they're trying to maintain the status quo, because you can't, if you change back. I mean, just look at kind of what's happening in Marvel and DC today. They're trying to make changes, and nobody's buying it, right?
Nobody's going along with it.
Right. The overwhelming majority of fans are going, boo, no, I don't want that. Give me my fill in the blank character back.
Right.
It's because they don't want those characters to change. They want them as they are. And so but you create yours, then you kind of get to do what you want. Let's see. We have a couple of questions. Brett, I will try to keep my eyes on the chat. If you ever see that I'm failing, please fill in. So a couple questions here or at least a question. Chris says, which do you all like or have more fun writing? Do you like writing the good guys or the villains? He says he personally enjoys writing the villains more. Why? Who wants to grab that one?
Well, I know from my limited experience, good guys, you can't have as much fun with them. They play by the rules. They have a set parameters in which they can act. They've got their moral and social rules. Whereas the bad guys, the whole idea is they're playing outside that. They can have fun and be as evil and twisted and megalomaniac as you want. They're always more fun to draw. I do find them more fun to write. A bit more freedom, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Hi, Cassisi. How are you? And hi, Ramal. Sorry, I'm just saying hi to some of the chatters here. So what about somebody else? What do you think?
Yeah, I kind of think what Pete said. That's kind of how I see the bad guy, especially if you're a good person, you almost get to kind of live out not fantasies, but certain ideas that you wouldn't do, and all that seems really good. But the good guy, usually you want to be the good guy, so you have more of an idea what he would do, and there's a little less freedom. Strangely enough, that not to get, but even when I read that even when they people do video games, people tend to stay good when they even make their own characters and stuff. Always tend to play good people, and more people have fun writing bad people. And I don't know if there's a difference between that, but just interesting observation.
No, anybody else got some thoughts?
I like the good guy. I mean, I think the good guy person. I mean, yeah, the bad guy, the evil guy, is the guy that gets to have more fun, that gets to have all this stuff, but he's loose, he's open. He can have that latitude. The good guy, depending on how you play it, is always skating from that edge. Because it's depending on what kind of situation that good guy's in. it could actually, you can add some layers to him by saying, at any time something could knock him over. I mean, look at Rorschach in Watchmen. I mean, the way that he's portrayed earlier in the career, he's very virtuous and playing by the rules, and then that one little thing knocks him over that edge, and he becomes a much harder character. But really, I mean, it's depending on your approach to the good guy. I love the bad guy. I mean, the bad guy will let you play loose with everything. But I think depending on how you approach the good guy, I mean, the good guy could be that guy you're trying to help, and what exactly is he struggling with?
Yeah,
cool. I think I love good guys. I mean, I'm the nerd. I'm like, I want to be the good guy. I don't want to be the bad guy.
Yeah.
And so one of my absolute favorite characters is Daredevil. I love Daredevil, and he is a good man.
Yeah.
But he has to try so hard.
Yeah. Struggle.
And that's what makes him noble and interesting. And where Bullseye or Kingpin can be evil and kind of help us live through some power fantasies and stuff, it's not as interesting, I think, even from a writing point of view.
Yeah.
Because something that I tell my students all the time is limitations aren't bad. Limitations are actually your friend when it comes to writing, because then you have to engage in problem solving. And you have a good guy. Like I'm not one of those people who says that Superman is boring. I think Superman's a great character.
Yeah.
But you gotta know how to write him.
Yeah.
Right. And
Ramal,
I think especially
I see your question, Ramal. No, just hang on a second. Ramal, I see your question. And that's actually something we're going to talk about. So hang tight. That's actually something we're going to talk about right after our little comic review. So hang tight there, Ramal. Go ahead, Aaron.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that's interesting is bad guys usually have no moral framework. So bad guys can do kind of anything and get away with it. But what's interesting about writing good guys, like Give us, they have a moral framework. That's what makes them good. And so they have to operate within that moral framework, and that's a little trickier, more interesting to write. Is how how does Superman get out of a very bad situation by still holding his morals intact? Not all situations, some situations,
Yeah. Yeah, and I would agree. I think that I think you often hear the argument that superheroes only as good as his bad guys, and I think there's some truth in that, because I think when we see the bad guys that aren't that don't have those moral codes and don't have the boundaries within which they play, we do want to see. I mean, despite everything going on in the world, I believe most people want to see justice. They want to see these things happen, and yet because we are a civilized people, we want to see justice within the parameters that we've established as a civilization. We don't want to see Punisher justice, although sometimes it feels good to see the Punisher justice, right? We look at it and go, yeah, they got what they deserve, right? But when it comes to writing those, it's much tougher, because you do have these moral dilemmas. And I think these are the things that draw readers to the characters that have the moral dilemmas, because I dare say, I would make the argument, everyone faces moral dilemmas. Now, my moral dilemma is not whether to save a trolley car full of kids or stop the Green Goblin. That's not my moral dilemma. But I understand moral dilemmas because I have them in my life. Well, there's nobody in this shop. Do I take this $50 widget here because no one sees me and I need it, and I really only brought $30? That's my moral dilemma, right? What am I going to do? We all have moral dilemmas. So I think this is the thing that draws us to the good guys, is because we have to see them go through the same sort of decision making that we go. Again, ours is not about putting villains in jail or whacking them into the onto the moon, but we still have dilemmas that we have to face and decisions that we have to make. Curtis, you gonna add something?
Yeah, no, I also like those characters that are TV on the edge, like we were talking about Daredevil. I like the Electras or those kind of characters, because they're that transition piece that the hero could fall from grace, know, that kind of that temptation. And I love the redemption kind of characters that start out as a villain or a rival, and then become the good guy, but there's always that kind of that edge to them,
Yeah.
some ways I can relate to those characters more because I think, at the end of every day we evaluate, or at least I evaluate what I did that day was the right decision
Yeah.
or not, what have you,
Well, and you use the word redemption, and I think that's something that as a culture, we like the idea because, this is not turning into a confessional. I don't want anyone to think that I'm not drawing any blinds, right? Especially since we're talking about Daredevil. But there certainly are things that in most people's lives they can look back and say, I really wish I hadn't done that. How can I make up for that? What can I do? What can I do to erase that? Right? What was it? Black Widow said in the Avengers movies.
I got red in my ledger.
I got red in my ledger. Yeah, I've got red in my ledger. And while we don't have the same red in our ledger that she does, we understand that, right? We understand what that means, and that draws us to that character because we have red in our ledger. It's different red, but we have red in our ledger. And we like the idea that people are given second chances, right?
I think it's more noble when you have a character like that has kind of fallen from grace and has seen that other side and can come back, as opposed to that one hero that's always been the good guy that's never had that downfall. It's so much more of a noble story, and that's why Daredevil, I agree, like one of the best because it's just up and down, up and down, up and down for decades now.
One of the things that I was talking about just slightly when we were off, because we were chatting behind the scenes, is talking about we have multi-generational, but we also have several international folks working with us. Pete, of course, is one of them. The advantage Pete has is that he speaks roughly the same language as us. There's sometimes he says something and we're like, what the heck did you just say? But I'm trying to get someone like Alex is Sarabia, the Penciler Divinity, is from Mexico. Louis Zerniowski and Leandro Huerga are from Argentina. I've talked to them about possibly coming on. Of course, time zones affect us a little bit, but some of them, they're concerned about their language, and when when I say their language, I mean kind of their understanding of the English language. And I tell them, come on, we're a family here. No one is going to laugh at your language. We want you to be a part of it. So I'm still working on trying to get them in. So hello, Mark. Hello, Roberta. I just said a whole bunch of good things about you off while Wayne was doing his thing. And hello, Roberto. Good to see you, sir. And I'm assuming Junior's with you. So, all right. So welcome back. We are talking about the craft of comics tonight, and we're talking about crafting well-rounded characters. And one of the Tommy, I'm on the stream, dude. He's asking me, how y'all doing? I'm like, I'm on the stream. Come on. So we are doing fine, Tommy. You're welcome to join us if you want. I know Wednesday is usually your night. But one of the questions that was asked, guys, Oven, I see Oven here. Agent Expose. Hello, Agent Expose. I'm sorry, some of these questions have kind of scrolled up. Agent Expose. Okay, it made you Agent Expose. Okay. Agent Expo. I'm just gonna say Agent. You are welcome to say Happy Father's Day to us. We'll accept it with open arms and appreciate the wishes from you. Let's see what else. Okay. Oven. Thank you, Oven. I know. Tommy, how you doing, Tommy? Wubba's greeting everybody. Excellent, Wubba. So I'm going to go back up to this question by Ramal. Ramal says, Pete, do you guys use the D&D style alignments? Anybody want to? Pete, that was addressed to you. So
just strange enough, I don't know if Pete wants to go. I don't, but I have a friend who's really interested in that, and I think he does, which is interesting.
Yeah, I've played D&D a handful of times. When I was in America.
Yeah. Y'all don't play D&D on the island over there?
Yeah, we do, but I didn't grow up. I didn't grow up doing it, so it was new to me. I really enjoyed doing it.
Yeah.
my friends aren't really into that sort of stuff, so I don't think I'd have the opportunity to do it. I try and sit my fiance down to play D&D might be an uphill battle, but
So you said, did I catch fiance for the first time ever on the stream?
yeah, she insists I call her fiance now. I can't just say
Oh.
I can't just say girlfriend. I have to call it what it is.
Well, congratulations to you.
Yeah,
Oh well, thanks.
man.
Yes.
We've been engaged for a few years now.
So are you having problems figuring out how to pull the trigger and make that happen, or
No, it's just a purely financial thing.
Oh, I got you.
Obviously, my money's been spent on the Cuba school tuition fees, so
Gotcha.
that's where a lot of my savings
Well, Aaron, you married? You're not. So I know Curtis and Mike are both married. So maybe you guys can back me up on this. And Pete, I realize what I'm about to say. I'm risking your wrath. Is she listening?
Oh,
no.
Okay, all right. So maybe not the wrath may not be too bad then, because I will say this: if you're waiting for the financial thing, that's never going to happen.
No, it's never.
It's never going to happen. So if you're using that, I get it. But yeah, if you're waiting on it, really, it ain't going to happen. You just got to pull the trigger and make it happen.
Yeah.
Pete's like, man, don't do this. We're supposed to be talking about characters.
Well, I'm looking forward to the stag do, or as you call it, the bachelor party.
Yeah.
That'll be
what did you call it?
We call it a stag do.
Stag what?
Stag do.
Stag do.
Yeah, stag and do. That's our. But I don't know anyone else that calls it bachelor parties apart from Americans. But,
okay, so sorry about that. I didn't mean to shine the spotlight on you there too. So D&D, you use that alignments? Do you use that for your characters?
Honestly, no. Just because I don't really know what the alignments are. I create characters from what I want to write about and what I want the story to be about, and what I find interesting. And I like my bad guys to be bad, and I like my good guys to be grey. I don't want them to be purely just good. I want them to have something in the background that makes them, they can go either way. It's like James Bond. I like James Bond because there's that side to him that's ruthless, and so I like my good guys to have that sort of edge. But what that would make them as a D&D character, I don't know.
Not sure. Yeah, you may need a D&D expert to come in and say this character is this way.
Yeah.
And I've heard players do that before. So thank you for the wishes, Chris. Happy Father's Day, he said to all of us. Ivy quickly says, hey y'all, glad to see you're doing this. Royal Airships also says happy Father's Day to all you fatherly types, and congrats, Pete.
Thanks.
So Josh, you're a D&D player, right?
Sure am.
Yeah.
Long,
So
long
do
time.
you use D&D to create your characters?
No, I don't, and I'm not sure why. Other than when I think of characters, I tend to think of terms of motivations, goals, and fears.
Cool. Great things to think about. I mean, you sounded like you've taught my class before.
I know,
Josh.
right?
Mike,
but
Curtis?
it is fun.
So go ahead. Yeah. No, go ahead. Yeah.
I was just gonna say it is kind of fun. I mean, if you play D&D long enough, you get into these nerd comments like, "Oh, Cat Mal from Firefly is totally chaotic good, man."
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
And then like, "No, he wasn't." And then you get into a fight.
Yeah, and then you get into a fight, and then the way gamers fight, they pull out their dice, right?
Yeah. D4s are deadly.
That's right. It's not an actual fist fight. It's dice. All right, I'm gonna. Curtis, Mike, what about you guys?
Oh, I'm a big D&D nerd, so I mean, I don't know if I actually articulate it mentally that way, but it's always somewhere in the back of my head, that whole aspect, so you can't take that away. It's definitely in the back of my head.
But you don't actually take the labels and apply them to your characters. This is a chaotic evil, this is a chaotic good, or
maybe like in hindsight, after I'm done doing it, but I wouldn't start out by saying, okay, I need a lawful good character and a neutral evil and all that. It's kind of more of an afterthought, really.
Yeah.
But I do
think
hear
it's
some
more.
people talk about. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
And I think it's more of an after effect when you write your character for the story. Then you can probably take your character as you've written him and put him on an alignment within where it lands in D&D.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm looking up a website for the example of what I use. Mike, what about you?
No, don't really do the D&D thing. I guess I base the stuff pretty much on character of the situation, the personality of the situation. I don't really like to bound them in a box too much, but no, I can't say that I use the D&D thing. I don't have a personality, that's relatable in this way or that way, or a term, I guess I'm trying to say. But I try to play it by kind of the truth of the character.
You knew where I was going, didn't you, Brett? I just sent you a website, and I want you to pop that up real quick. Curtis, that looks good. We'll come back to that in just a second.
I don't know loads about obviously Dungeon D&D, but by doing that, are you not just sort of confining your character a bit and just boxing them in, whereas real people are a bit more fluid?
I could see using the description of certain alignments to help frame how you want your character to be, starting out as a starting point, but I wouldn't adhere to it like an absolute. Like, as long as your character grows through the story, it's a basis to grow the character, but always make sure that the character is more important than the alignment or whatever.
Well, I think, and again, I'm about to show what I use for mine, and it is not D&D, but I think these are good, whether you use an alignment or whether you use something else that I'm going to show here, because I think what happens is that we need some boundaries for our characters to keep them in character. And the example I always give is that have you ever been watching something or reading something and a character does something and you're going, and you as a fan, you go, no, I'm not buying that. Cap would never do that. No, that's not a Captain America thing, right?
Yeah.
And I would argue that what's happened is that writer has completely ignored the boundaries of Captain America's personality. And you could say, well, it's situational. He did it on this. I get it. I totally get that. And certainly there are those arguments, but I think that we need those boundaries to help keep our characters, quote unquote, in character. Brett, can you show the website that I just showed you? Okay. Just to screen. All right, so I actually use something called the Myers-Briggs personality type indicator, and now you might say I don't do that for every single one of my characters. I do it for my primaries because I do want them to stay within character. Now, I will tell you this: I was introduced to the Myers-Briggs personality type indicator by my wife. She is also she's Dr. Mann, and she has her degree in counseling. And this is something that I have taken multiple times because I was used as a guinea pig often as she was studying to get her master's degree and then her doctorate degree. And I just over time I found it very interesting in the way it charted my personality, right? And now there are lots of things that you can use. There's a Myers-Briggs. Are you showing it, Brett? Okay. There's the Myers-Briggs. You can use the four humors, the things like that. But what I like about the Myers-Briggs, can you scroll down, Brett, till you see the little chart there, a little square chart that says ISTJ, ISFJ. Okay. So those are all the types, and there are four basic components of each type. I am an INTJ. My personality type is an INTJ. And my wife would tell you that I'm an ENTJ. Of course, I is an introvert, E is an extrovert. But that's one of those cases where my I and my E is so close to one or the other. It really is very much situational. I'm an I in some situations, and I'm an E in some situations. I like this because it does apply a type to a character, and then you can say, this is my character. And then you can start asking yourself, well, how does this character type react in this situation? Because sometimes as creators we stumble, like, okay, I've created this situation for my character, what would they do? And we should always be asking that about our characters. What are they going to do? What are they going to do? And I like to go back then to the Myers-Briggs type. So what's their personality type to help me make that decision as to what this character would do. That doesn't mean I always 100% follow this. No, of course not. But this is my guideline for my character so that I can try to be true to the type that I've created as well as be true to the character. And there are, of course, other tools that you can use, but the Myers-Briggs is the one that I personally like to use. Okay, Brett, you can stop showing that and go back to Curtis. And so before we take, hopefully, a couple other comments here. Hopefully that kind of answered some of your questions. Before I get to the next comments here, Curtis, tell us about this thing you were drawing here.
Yes, this thing. So this is our Silverline characters, Cat and Mouse, actually Roland's famous characters, Cat and Mouse. And this is, next to them is the character I'm working on for my comic book called The Shadow Ghost. And so it's going to be a martial arts kind of themed comic book. And just kind of without saying too much about it, the character is like an immortal martial arts master that's also a ghost-like figure. And so as we talked about before, I have been doing Kung Fu for about 25 years now. So I have this extensive background, and I figured I'd kind of use it and marry that with my art background. And so you're going to see a lot of authentic martial arts maneuvers, techniques, history, culture, things like that. And when Roland and I were talking about, the thing I wanted to stress is the thing that's unique is the same person that's holding the pen is the same person that knows how to hold the sword and all those things. So I'm hoping that kind of authenticity will kind of offer something unique. So that's kind of this is kind of a promotional piece that Roland and I were talking about.
And might we be able to? Are you doing all this digitally?
Oh yeah, that's
okay.
Kind of the game.
So we might have to see if we can't talk an inker into maybe inking it traditionally, so that we can maybe offer it as a reward for the upcoming Cat and Mouse Kickstarter.
I like the sound of that, and I hear that there's a couple inkers on the Silverline payroll. Yeah. So,
very cool.
Excellent. I know somebody's watching the stream right now that's an inker, I heard. So
that's right. Yeah.
I'm just saying. Oh, and on that note, just to plug our good friends, I got the template for this page by our good friends at Kablam.
I knew I recognized that template.
Yeah, that's the template. So before I even started, I contacted Barry Gregory like a while back at Kablam and said, I want to make sure my resolution is good and everything's good before I start working on anything. And they got awesome templates, so you should check out their pages.
Absolutely. Very cool. So before I get to the next question here is Royal Airships says you all should play a one-off game of D&D. Okay, so hold on now. What's a one-off game mean?
Basically going through a dungeon.
Oh, so
instead of an adventure,
all of us
kind
just
of like,
do.
Yeah, 3 adventurers. You enter a dungeon. You try to find a treasure. Get out. Just really quick.
I bet Josh would do that for us, wouldn't you, Josh?
Yeah, I can do that.
I'm not sure that that's what this stream is, but but yeah. Chris said we had a character creation session using the D&D format for the Creative Writing Club before the quarantine. Oh, that's very cool. Was that Chris? Was actually that on campus or was that online? The session. Do you recall?
Wait, I think I helped out with that.
Oh, did you?
I think so. It sounds vaguely familiar.
Wubba, send me a private message. Send Roland Mann a private message, and I'll be sure to get the templates to you. Yeah, and I'm also I saw your other email, and I got to chase those pages down because I'm chomping at the bit to see them because I know what they are. Ivy Quigley says the alignments are also a bit restrictive with their dichotomous depictions of good, evil, and lawful, chaotic. I think the reality of a lot of well-written characters is that they change around given time circumstance, and that's kind of something we talked about a little bit is the fact that we want to see kind of character arcs, and so I think he's also pointing out that it is. Can be restrictive. Cassisi says he's an INFJ. Very cool. Campus and online, Chris says. And Ramal says that helps. So, and yes, it was online, and Dr. Begley was there. So you just didn't recall that off the top of your head.
I don't recall a lot anymore.
Well, I hate to tell you, it's a little bit of OLD kicking in probably, but I didn't say that. Oh, see, there's that voice in my head.
Yeah.
I keep hearing it. Okay, so let's back to the character creation here. What are some of the first things you think about when you're creating a character? When you're creating a new character, what do you think of first? Do you have a system of I need this and then I need this and I need this, or how do you go about creating a character? Somebody jump in.
Believability.
Strangely enough, for me being an artist, it's usually visual, and I don't know if that's unique. There's a visual idea and hook, and usually the visualization of the character in my head will kind of dictate the personality I want them to go. And I'm actually writing a story now with 3 young kids, and I'm starting to figure out the personality. But I have them in my head, and I'm actually kind of figuring out the personalities as I actually go through the writing, which is not. I wouldn't recommend that to every writer. You should always figure that out. But I am doing that, playing with the characters as I'm writing the story. So that's a different way of tackling it. But yeah, they're organic, and I tend to change my character sometime. One character seemed one way to me in the story, and now she's developing another way. And I'm like, okay, I kind of like that idea. And so yeah. You can prepare, but I'd always be fluid in being able to change your characters depending on what feels right for the story.
Josh, what do we call that? Don't we call that pantsers?
Yeah. There's plotters and there's pantsers. Plotters are the ones who have everything plotted out, hence the name. Pantsers are the ones who fly by the seat of their pants. And just recently, I heard of plantsers, which are somewhere in between.
Well, it worked for Stephen King. I mean, he's like the king of planters or all his books are free written.
But
he's a mutant. Like,
yeah, that's true.
And I mean that as a compliment. I wish I were.
Let's always refer to the very best at their game when we're comparing ourselves to others, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So, Mike, what about Man in the Mask? So when you were creating these characters, what are some of the first things that you said, okay, here's the character I need, this is what I need?
Well, I was trying, like I said just like a few minutes ago, believability. I wanted a character that wasn't dependent on the typical masked man tropes that, there are certain things that people, look for. I wanted somebody that was just kind of, like I said, emphasis on man opposed to the mask, and then kind of, see what that does to influence the idea of it, so to speak. And I just wanted somebody very human, very believable, and very fallible, but at the same time, a character that you can kind of root for and see things of yourself. I mean, I think that's a lot of the characters that I enjoy reading.
Yeah.
I at least find some component of something that's kind of like me in them, especially the ones that I really, really gravitate towards. And so when I was trying to come up with a character, it just seemed to me like, while I wanted to use a lot of comic tropes, it was so much more important that I came up with someone that, I could put quirks into, someone that I could let kind of lead me through the story. And I mean, to use the definition, a pantser. I definitely let it fly. I let the characters kind of lead me along. And so when I started imbuing him with certain, like I said, certain quirks, it led me to other points. The feeling of exuberance of that one day that he would take on this identity. But then as he got older, it started kind of sinking in a more, is this something I can do? Not necessarily because I don't think I can do it, but because someone else is telling me maybe I can't do it. And that is, his perception of himself has been more influenced by the outside forces. Like, if he was to listen to himself, that maybe he would have been a lot better off. But a lot of the conflict in the story comes from letting outside sources get at him. And that influences personality. That influences the way that you get from point A to point B, and then eventually to D and eventually Z. Things are how do you get over that? That was the conflict for me. And then, like I said, that wrapped up his personality. I felt like that was instead of me really working hard, and if I set up all these little points of possibilities, it really his personality framed the direction I took him.
Yeah, very cool.
I have a question for
yeah.
you writers.
Hold on, let me
Yeah.
hold on to your question there.
Sure.
Wubba says first thing pops in is always why. What is his or her why? What is their purpose? Thomas Flormonti said pantser baby all the way.
We need t-shirts. T-shirts,
pantsers. I'm a pantser baby. And Donnie said, just stop by to say hi, Roland. Hi, Donnie. How are you? Hopefully you stick around a little bit. Ask us some hard questions about creating well-rounded characters. All right, Curtis, what was your question?
Yeah, my question was, and I haven't encountered this, but for those of you that do the writing, have you ever encountered? I've heard people say sometimes that the character kind of decides for themselves, like you kind of just there's a certain momentum after a certain point of time where you're trying to steer it one way, but that's just not going to happen. The characters want to go this way. Is that something you folks have encountered?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I'm on issue 8 of my character, and I know the ending. I know where I want him to go, but there's a part of me that I haven't figured out. I know why I would do it. I'm trying to figure out why he would do it, and I know how I'm going to write it. But yeah, I've had definitely different moments I've written in my story because it just feels like that's what's good for the character. And I couldn't describe exactly. I mean, I'm not going to be like, yes, I hear voices, and then little voices that but yeah, you do get a feeling sometimes that, and I think it's more of, I just don't see my character doing this. And I think that also, if you're especially writing a story about a character that's going through personal growth,
yeah,
then you have to start asking what they would do.
Yeah. Good. Aaron, why don't you kick Curtis off there and put your art up on the screen, if you will. All right. Who else wants to answer Curtis's question?
I changed my story based on what I did 3/4 of the book of my graphic novel, just because the way the character was leading me. I changed the climax purely because even though I had it pretty much road mapped out what I had done and the different things that kind of he went through, I changed because it wouldn't have felt true to him. It would have felt very forced, and so I had to kind of rearrange things. And so yeah, the character can. Like I said, I let all the characters lead.
Yeah,
I work so hard on making, like I said, them based on so many little bits of believability that they're actually, again, they're whispering in your ear. They tell you what they.
Not audibly, but
no audibly. But when you're sitting there drawing and they're looking at you and you think, well, so
yeah. I think so much of writing is done on the subconscious level. Even if you're a plotter, it's just the difference between a plotter and a pantser is how you interact with the subconscious. And I think when you're in the process, there does come a moment where it's almost like you're watching it. I know I tend to think very visually, so I almost like to see the movie screen in my head and the events playing out. And sometimes it feels like I'm more recording than directing. And that's usually when I'm like, okay, I probably got something here.
Cool. Yeah. It's very much a Josh answer. I love it.
Thank you.
Yeah, oh no, it was meant as a compliment. Absolutely. Yeah, I think it goes back to a little bit, Curtis. I think it goes back to the idea that when you have a well-rounded character and a well-defined character, they're going to tell you what to do. Or how they would react in that scenario. You might get them in a situation and you say, well, what I really want to do is I want them to do this. But you're like, no, it just doesn't make any sense for the character because that character wouldn't do that. That's not the way this character would react. And I think when you get into that situation, when you have your characters, refusing to do the things that you want them to do, then that should tell you that you've got a character who is kind of well defined by you as the writer, because their personality and their character are determining what the decisions they're going to make in the story. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Cool.
That's cool. Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah. So Chris said, and I have a whole list of questions, but for those of you watching, as long as you keep asking questions, we'll keep addressing those. Okay, my questions can keep. So Chris says, when creating characters, does the genre of the story affect your character creating process? That's a good question. Does it matter if you're creating fantasy, or if you're creating li-fi, or if you're creating superheroes? Does that matter in your character creating process?
To me personally, no. But then again, the story I'm writing, the Gollins is fantastical, but the character is based on me, and it's just the growth of him starting out arrogant and going more, learning humility. And so I think it's dependent. I usually look at characters as certain core like growth values or values we have. I don't think the genre matters as much. I think you can put like any character in any genre as long as you can write it well.
Mm.
At least that's my take on it, but I don't know if I'm right.
I think that can lead to some really fun things where, genre is context, and
Yeah.
there are certain elements that people expect, but if you understand that, like, you can put a character that doesn't usually belong in there into that context, and it can be really interesting and kind of new and neat.
A great example that comes to mind, strange enough, is Ash Williams in Evil Dead.
Yeah.
Sort of horror, and then a completely comedic character, and it just worked for whatever reason.
Somebody else?
I don't
Genre,
pay,
does it matter?
I don't pay attention. I'm writing about a man, and the fact that he wears a mask is kind of secondary. It's kind of his life, and it just I like I said, I try to pull in things that kind of balance both of those words, man in the mask. But at the same token, the first thing I do, I'm writing about a guy. I'm writing about somebody I may know or myself. It's
Yeah.
I try not to let it kind of frame me.
Yeah. Curtis, jump in, man.
Yeah.
I see you going.
He knows me too well.
He's thinking. He's like,
No. Curtis is like, is someone else about to speak? Because I don't want to speak if someone else is about to speak. That's what he's thinking.
Exactly.
Now that we know that, we can all start talking immediately when he tries to speak.
Yeah, we're all gonna be watching.
Really
Curtis.
nervous.
I think the setting, the genre, and everything is always like in service of the story, and the story is in service of the character. So you kind of start with the genesis being the character and what journey they're going through, and then everything else just kind of starts to answer itself. Well, if it's horror, it fits the horror genre. If it's sci-fi, but I don't think it's a matter of shoehorning it the opposite way around.
Yeah.
That's just my personal thought.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, I would almost look at genre in terms of what it allows the character to do and not do. And then it just gives them different set of parameters to operate under.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. I think of genre more as, and this is not the answer to genre, but I think of it more as setting, where I want my characters to be my characters, that I should be able to take these characters and place them in any of the settings, and they still act like those characters,
Right.
So I want to circle back to a question that I don't remember if we finished. I know that I didn't answer it, but if another one of you didn't answer, just remind me, because I'm trying to focus on you guys and on the things. I can't find the question. I'm trying to scroll back to it. But one of the questions was, what's the first thing you think of when trying to create a character? And I know my answer for that is, and Josh is going to know where I'm going here. My answer is goal. I think that character has to be defined by something that they want. I believe this about all people. I believe this about characters, in that we have to know what motivates the character, what drives them. So there's something that they want, right? That's their goal. So this is the first thing that I come up with, because I make the argument certainly I make the argument to my students as well, is that characters with weak goals are weak characters. If there's not something that they want, then we're often, as a reader, we're often going, why am I reading this? What's happening? What's going on? Why are they doing all of this? And I think, there are some whys that are good, but saying why are these characters doing all this is not a good question to have. You want to know, even if it changes, you want to know what's driving the character and what's making them go. So for me, that's one of the first things that I always come up with is, what does this character want? What motivates them and what makes them move? Did everybody have the opportunity to answer that earlier? I know we did a little bit, but I can't remember all of them. Okay, so Royal Airships has the next question. Wubba says, Energizers are funny in the House of Horror. Royal Airship says, how do you avoid recreating a character or trope? Say you're writing a classic 30s adventure story. It's a strong draw to recreate Indiana Jones. So how do you avoid recreating? How do you avoid retreading treaded grounds? Pete, jump in first.
Yeah,
I see you breathing the hardest.
Yeah, because you take inspiration ultimately from everything around you, and especially the stuff you're a fan of. And Star Wars is probably one of those things that it's a really ultimately. The first film, The New Hope, it's that archetypal story of the hero's journey. And I think you could do that 1,000 times, and it's essentially the same thing, but it's your characters that change.
Yeah.
Your character, like you say, character motivation is what ultimately makes that story. Okay, the adventure is the same thing. You're going on that discovery and you become that hero, but how your character reacts to that, and you have to change it. It's a tough one because you are influenced by the stuff around you, and if you love Indiana Jones and you're like, oh, I want to go and write, but you don't want to do it fan fiction, you just want to make your own thing. So I think you just have to. I honestly don't know. Yeah. Writers, you guys are writers. You tell me how you figure it out. Because I love Conan. I love Conan, and I will write those sort of barbarian warriors forever. Right. Yeah. But you're not going to beat. It's not going to beat Conan. So you have to try and find something in that character that separates them.
You and I are going to have to talk after Champ is done, and then I did not realize you loved Conan. So there's a couple more questions here. We will get to you guys, Chris, and see, Michael's on here asking this question, and Jonathan Hing says a lot of genre is something discovered afterwards. The hard-boiled detective genre came out of writers trying to imitate Hammett and Chandler. The fantasy genre came out of a reaction to Tolkien and Robert E. Howard. Lovecraftian and Kafkaesque really tell you what it's based on, the specific writers who started it. Genre really means the style of the first writer who wrote the first story in that genre. And hello, Brittany Man. So he's just commenting kind of on what we were talking about earlier. But who else wants to chime in on how do you avoid recreating what's happened before?
I'll jump in. Yeah. I'll just say I don't know that you can. I think that it's what you have to do is you got to find the truth of it, which sounds kind of flaky, but you got to figure out what the truth is to the story and the character, because there's nothing new out there. Mm-hmm. But you just kind of have to be honest. Don't be clever, be honest. The story, my script for King's Hunter, it's from old folk tales about vampires in Europe, and the titular character is very much inspired by Solomon Kane, and I'm not going to shy away from that. I'm not going to steal, but I'm not going to be afraid of the influences, as long as the story that I'm telling is an honest to God story and not just a pastiche of different things. Like tropes aren't necessarily bad. Genre
Right.
isn't bad. It's just when it's all tropes or no story, all structure and no heart, then it becomes a problem.
I agree. Curtis?
Thank you. No, I mean, I'm just kind of thinking more on instinct, but it's kind of like I think the way to make the character unique is you have to go out on a limb and put a bit of yourself in it. You know, that's where uniqueness comes from. You know, but you got to kind of dig deep and put yourself out there and put something that's from your experience. And I think when the story doesn't come out solid and when the character, you know, kind of comes across as contrived or kind of played out, it's because the person's not willing to put themselves on the line. But there's something special about each person that they have in their life story that's different. And at the same time, there's something universal. I mean, you know, sometimes you put something out there and you think you're the only person that experienced it or whatever, and all of a sudden you have a ton of fans that went through something similar. You know, so I'd say put a bit of yourself in there is the key point.
I've got the analogy for you. Okay, so everybody pay attention, listen up here. Here's the analogy, right? It's now I don't do a whole lot of cooking, right? But for those of you who have done any amount of cooking, you're gonna go with me here. When you get a recipe from your grandmother, she says, here's my recipe for this, right? And you say, she probably gives you a whole bunch of them, right? And there's the one you're like, oh, I love my grandmother's this, I'm going to fix that, right? But then there's the other one you're like, I never really liked this that my grandmother did, but I'm going to try to fix it, but I'm going to change it, right? This is my recipe, but I'm going to add my flavor to it, okay? She's given you the recipe, she's given you the thing that already exists, but you're putting part of yourself into it. You're putting your flavor into it. You're doing that thing that makes it yours. So that when you go to parties and you carry your thing, they're like, oh, Roland's bringing his thing again. That's really good. I like the way you put those little flavor thingies in them, right? It's different than what I've ever eaten before. That's when you say, yes, this might just be a fill in the blank casserole, but I've done this one thing differently that makes it my casserole, right? And stories are like that. You have to figure out what that thing is that you have that makes the casserole a little bit different, right? It makes it your casserole. Yes, it's still a casserole, but it's your casserole and you add that flavor to it. Can I get an amen?
Amen.
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 Hallelujah.
Chris says, I love cooking. That's why I got a degree in it. Chris, if you're local, we may, Silverline may need a chef. Just saying. Let's see here. I think there was did anybody else want to address that? Chris says, is she using a parking meter to beat the monsters to death in that image?
Yes, she is.
The
That's
answer is
actually
yes.
a scene in the book where she beats them to death to the parking meter, and I just thought it was like, I mean, how badass can you be if you just grab a parking meter and just turn it on? Whatever, yeah.
Yeah. It is a scene from that page
From the story.
That page is not
No.
a page from the story, but it is from the scene in the story. Yes, absolutely. And that is from what book, Aaron?
Fire Rush.
Fire Rush #1, which will be kickstarting when?
July 7th.
In July, that's right. So keep keep your eyes open for that. Roy Airship says, character casserole, Roll a Man's Guide to Protagonist and Pleasing House Guest. Okay, so Jonathan Henning asked, do you feel that many innovations in our genre start with what if? What if the environment and the religion mattered in Flash Gordon? You get Dune. What if politics really mattered in Middle Earth, The Song of Ice and Fire? What if Philip Marlowe was a black man in Los Angeles at the time? Devil in a Blue Dress by Easy Rollins. What do you guys think? You think some of the stuff starts with a what if?
Oh yeah.
I think my personal story did not, but I think a lot of stories can. I don't know, maybe I take that back. My story is about a bunch of young gods who don't want to be gods, so they leave. So maybe that was the what if there. I don't know.
Yeah.
There probably is an element of a what if, but I don't know whether that's where a writer would start. I don't think George R. R. Martin looked at Lord of the Rings and said, "Hey, what if I did this, but I put some politics in there?"
In sex.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
think I think yes, certainly you could look at it that way, but
Yeah.
I don't know if that's where you'd start with
So
something.
I think fan fiction starts that way.
Yes, yeah, exactly, yeah.
Like Twilight Zone stories are great that way.
Mm.
You know, science fiction, stories like that. I would venture to say short stories probably start out more that way than longer stories. But then longer stories may. But it seems like more short stories like a what if, then they play out that scenario and a sort of like short story to see what would happen.
I also think sometimes the good stories, the ones that really get to us, can be boiled down into a what if scenario.
Yeah.
That might not be the genesis of it.
Yeah.
I think there's a definite genre of that. I think Twilight Zone is probably a really good example of that. Yeah.
And there's definitely a whole. I'm a fan of alternate history. Of course, I'm a history buff, but I'm also a fan of the alternate history, which tends to fall within the science fiction genre, I think. But an alternate history always hinges on what if X happened instead of this, or what if X happened during this, or what if something was different that caused the timeline to go in a different way.
Yeah. And there's there's story arcs which center around that, even within mainstream comics. Usually it's the Second World War. Let's be honest.
Yes, it is.
Where,
You're right.
Someone the Nazis win, or someone goes back and helps the Nazis.
Yeah. Or for US, a lot of times it hinges on the Civil War.
Yeah.
Interesting note, and I'm not trying to promote my thesis because I don't really want anyone to go out and read it, but and it's also 20 years old at this point almost. One of the things my thesis is on alternate histories, the Civil War, American Civil War. What I found is this is my findings, right, in a nutshell. What I found is that no writer ever presented a positive world outcome with a Confederate victory. Now, there were lots of Confederate victories coming. Obviously, that's, what if the South had won instead of the North, right? But in none of them ever was there ever a more positive world, a more positive outcome if the South had won. So that was interesting finding. Yeah.
On the subject of like what ifs and stuff like that, and since we were talking to Conan earlier, I always was wondering, because Roland wrote that book Cray, and Cray is real. I always enjoy it because there's a twist. I won't spoil it, but the twist in it, it just always blew my mind, and so I always wondered, for Roland, was that a what if scenario that started that, or because it's just such a unique barbarian kind of story, and left so much open to go in another direction,
No, it was not a what if at all.
Okay.
And it's Cray is probably that's probably a much deeper conversation than time allows for right now.
Sure.
But no, it was not a what if at all. Certainly, Conan was inspirational in the creation of it, but also at the time of the creation, so was Dune. I had just finished Dune, and the guy who did the original art concepts for it was a fan of Dune as well. So I would say probably Dune was as inspirational to that, to Cray's creation, as Conan. But yeah, no, it wasn't a what if, and I'm not sure exactly what you're asking about, but you can tell me. You can tell me later.
Yeah, I'll tell you afterwards.
Especially since it's a spoiler, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you have the great Marvel What If. Titles.
Yeah.
Love that.
Those books.
Love that.
Yeah, and DC's Elseworlds. What if Batman was a vampire? What if Superman landed in Russia?
Oh yeah.
I love the what if Superman landed in Gotham and Batman. That was just one of the best premises there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Chris says he still owes Dr. Begley a pork roast.
Yeah, he does.
And then he says they did an episode about that what if concept on love, death, and robots on Netflix.
That's a really good series, and if you haven't watched
Yeah.
it, it's
What the series is called? Love, Death, and Robots.
Yeah, it's like an anthology, just a
Okay.
series of short. But the animation on that, sorry to get off topic,
Yeah,
is
that's okay.
incredible.
Really? Okay, cool.
Really incredible. Yeah, some great stories in there.
I'm sorry. Roy Airship says, if Steam Patriots ever gets to the Civil War, we'll let you have heavy-handed input, but the North still wins. Okay, guys, I'm looking at the clock, and it looks like we're getting close to the end of our time here. Yeah, I still have a whole list of questions that I didn't get to. Is there anything that you guys want to say about character that you're like, why didn't Roland ask this, or why didn't we talk about this? This is your opportunity. Speak up now. What do you think is important about character that we haven't touched on tonight?
I think we've touched on it. I think if your character, you have to figure out, what they want. You have to figure out where they are and where they've got to get to. And just as important as your main character, you have your supporting cast of characters, because they're either going to help or hinder your main character in their journey. And then your bad guy, I guess, because your good guy's only as good as your bad guy's bad, I guess. Yeah. Gotta have a good bad guy. I think we touched on that. We've sort of touched on that.
I would add, because I do think having them want something is so important, but I would also add they got to be good at something too. Like they don't have to be like great at it at the very beginning, but they got to have something that makes them at least competent. Because there's something just so unappealing about somebody who just fails at everything, unless it's a comedy.
I was gonna say you just described Charlie Brown, man. I love Charlie Brown.
Yeah, different genres, different expectations.
But that's what he's good at, right? Is failing. So there you go.
That's part of his journey, isn't it? You say, look, Luke Skywalker's part of his journey is becoming the Jedi. He starts as a farmhand and learns to be this great hero.
And so this is a good example of I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step on you here, Pete. But one of the things I always talk about in my class is that and I even touched on this earlier. We have to know what the character wants. Luke says this very early when we first meet Luke. He says, "I want to be a Jedi like my father." Right? He tells us that very early. We know exactly what Luke wants. And so we get to watch him as he tries to accomplish this. We're not wondering, why is Luke doing all these things? No, Luke wants to be a Jedi. That's what he wants to do. That's what drives him. That's what motivates him. That's what makes him go. Right?
Would that scene completely have changed if Obi-Wan actually chuckled after he said that? I don't know.
Have you seen the meme going around that has Luke holding the lightsaber and the sword going off into his brain, and Obi-Wan says, "Oh crap." Yeah. So there's a couple things that I think is important to character that we didn't get to talk to. I'm not going to really talk about it here, but I certainly think they need to be mentioned. Josh, you touched on it a little bit, and it's talking about character flaws. I think characters, in the same way that you said they can't be totally full of flaws, I think they can't be flawless. And I think that's an argument that people make about Superman a lot of times, is that he's perfect. There's no flaws. Yeah. And then you just say the K word to them, and they're like, well, kryptonite, whatever. But I think that there has to be some kind of a legit flaw. And the other thing that I think a lot of people don't think about is names. I think we have to give consideration to names, and we didn't really get to talk about that a lot. But I think those are important elements when it comes to talking about characters.
Yeah. Yep. In a baby name book.
I've got 3 of them. Yeah. Kasisi says, "Thanks, guys. Thanks for joining us, Kasisi. I appreciate it. Can't wait to see Josh. You probably remember Kasisi is a former student of ours.
I do.
He's a graduate, and I don't know if I'm letting the cat out. You could send me a nasty email if I overstep my bounds. But Josh, he's working on a comic book too, and he sent me some preview pages, and they look really cool. So I'm
Oh,
like,
that's
yes, let's
exciting.
go, dude. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very excited to see. Very excited to see what he's doing. Yeah, Wubba says Superman in feudal Japan was really good. Chris says he'll email the recipe for I guess for the pork roast
Okay.
to anyone who wants this. And then Chris says names are one of the hardest things for me. So yeah, maybe we'll talk about that sometime. Talk about just names or some of the other things. Okay, so we are calling it. Going to call it a night. Tomorrow night we will have our Silverline one-on-one, and we're going to talk to today's the 21st. Yeah, we're going to talk to Alex Gallimore. Alex Gallimore
cool.
is our I guess we call him K1. He's QB1 for Silverline, and he's been very instrumental in getting a lot of the Qbert grads on board. Which from to me says a whole lot about Alex, because they don't know any of us, and they're willing at Alex's word to come on and and give us a chance, give Silverline a chance. I know that's what got Pete here. So hopefully we'll prove him out in the end, but he's here because of Alex. So tomorrow's one-on-one with Alex. We'll talk to Alex, about he's young, but we're still going to talk about where he come from, what makes him draw, what his influences are, and probably where he wants to go, what he wants to do. So be sure to tune in tomorrow night. That's Monday night, June 22nd, 9 p.m. Eastern time for Alex Gallimore. Next week, we're going to talk about music. Sid will be back on with the Wednesday crew. And then we will be back here next week, and we're going to talk about music, how music affects us as we create, as we draw, soundtracks to our music, what inspires us, that kind of thing. Not a one single does music do this for you, but it's just going to be about music and how it intertwines with us as creatives. Someone said they were a metalhead earlier. Who was that?
That was me. I've been since.
Aaron.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And I'm very much the same way. I'm a metalhead as well. So we'll talk about all these things next week. It'll start with Sid on Wednesday, and then we'll be back on Sunday to do that. So we'll go around, tell everybody where they can find you on the interwebs. Curtis, where can everybody find you on the internet?
Sure. You can find me on Facebook. It's Curtis with a K, last name Fujita. You can also find me on Instagram, YouTube, and also on Facebook through my martial arts school. It's Tiger Crane Kung Fu, and on Instagram and YouTube, Tiger Crane 805.
Excellent. And remember to address him as Sifu Curtis, or he will smack you down. Just kidding. He wouldn't do that. Not unless you smacked him first, and then it's boot to the head. Josh, where can folks find you? Thanks for joining us tonight, Josh.
Oh, it's my pleasure. You can find me on Twitter at Joshua Begley1. It's JOSHUA BEGLEY. And on the face space, you can find me at Begley Writer.
And don't forget, folks, I will put all of this information in below wherever you're watching this, whether that be Facebook, Twitch, or YouTube. I'll put all the links below. Pete, where can folks find you?
Can you hear me? Can you see me?
We can hear you and we can see you, but you actually look like you might be frozen.
Yeah, my screen just went blank, but yeah, it doesn't matter. You can find me on. Yeah, that's the main thing. That's it. I'm nothing to look at, so it's fine. Instagram is primarily where I'm at. It's Peter Clinton Art, and it's the same on Facebook and Twitter. Yes, nice and simple.
All right. Sounds good. And I can't wait to see more of Champion and Miss Fury art from you. It's
Yeah.
looking great so far, sir.
Thank you. It's fun.
Aaron, what about you? Where can folks find you?
You can find me on Facebook under my name. I have my own, but Humphreys Illustration, HUMPHRES. He'll spell it right underneath the video. And then on Instagram at ALH3810, which I eventually have to change, but that's my handle for now. And then I am posting Goblins on Webtoons under Goblins. I think that's it. I don't know. At least I'm not thinking of anything right now.
And again, we'll have the appropriate links for you folks. Mike, what about you? Where can folks find you?
You can find anything Man in the Mask related at amkcomics.com. While you're on the page, you can find my Facebook and Instagram and my Twitter. pretty much everything there, and all my print comics are at indieplanet.com.
That's right. We love Indie Planet. Thank you, sir. And don't forget, y'all, we're going to be watching Josh as they create King's Hunter in the coming weeks. So we're going to get to see that. You'll get to see that as it goes along.
Yeah.
You can find me on Facebook at Roland Man. You can find me on Twitter at Man Roland. Don't forget, Silverline Comics has a website, silverlinecomics.com. You can find Silverline Comics on Facebook as well. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share and love and heart and all of those other things that you do on all those social medias. Spread the word. Let folks know that that you love you some Silverline, and they should love some Silverline too. So until tomorrow night, everyone.
Make mine Silverline.
Make mine Silverline. Good night, everyone.
Night.
Good night.
Bye.